Welcome to Blue Talks.
It's 3:12 in the morning. It's late January, Northeast Ohio, and it's cold. And it's not the postcard rolling hills of snow cold. It's I stepped outside of my house and I felt the cold instantly penetrate through my jacket, through my sweater, and into my bones. The kind of cold that makes you sit there and wonder to yourself, why do I continue to do this year after year after year? But hey, we're from Boston, so you understand what I'm saying here, right? I'm in my car, the only thing left in it, 2 giant garbage bags of wrinkled clothes and a life I no longer recognize. On the passenger side floor, a half-empty bottle of vodka swishes around every time I take a turn. Underneath my seat, an unlabeled pill bottle with who knows what in it, just shards of pills that are also highly representative of the life that I am living at this point. I haven't showered in days. I haven't eaten a real meal in months. Up to this point, I had taken to just going into gas stations and stealing whatever I could, with my personal preference being hot dogs or these little taquitos that made great late night snacks when you haven't eaten for days at a time. I hadn't talked to my family in weeks. I can't remember the last time I had a real, honest, truthful conversation and looked someone in the eyes. I mean, really looked them in the eyes for as long as I could remember. And the truth of the matter is, I really didn't care whether I lived or died. Up to this point, my life had just become a series of 1,000 little lies. 1,000, I'll do right next time. 1,000, if I just get another chance, I promise this time it'll be different. But it was all hollow words that had no meaning. I vividly remember that night, staring up in my car at the dome light as it started to flicker out, thinking that when that last bit of light left, could it take me with it? Not because I wanted to have some ridiculous death, but it was just because I couldn't feel anymore, and all life's energy was taken from me. But I didn't know at that point how close I was to one little reaction, one little interaction that was going to help bring my life back to purpose. Now, I do want to take a second right now to acknowledge where we're at. I mean, MIT is no small university. MIT is a name that rings out, not just throughout the country, but throughout the world. We know that the people who come from MIT change society, change business, change medicine. There's real transformation that goes on within these halls. But it's not just that external transformation. It's not the external challenges that they face as they're going through their education, but the true inner challenges that we have to go through looking within ourselves to figure out who exactly we are. But before we get into the heart of the conversation today, I do have one question to ask you. Is Nick Volinchak looking good today or what? Right? Okay, that's not ego. I mean, okay, it's a little bit of ego, right? It definitely is. But it's actually an homage. It's an homage to one of my friends, Sweet and Sour Larry Sweeney. Now, Sweet and Sour Larry Sweeney was a professional wrestler, and he had the kind of unmatched charisma, animal magnetism, that when he came down to the ring and he got on the microphone and he positioned his body and you could see the smirk on his face and he said, "Is Sweet and Sour Larry Sweeney looking good today or what?" At that point, the audience was just putty in his hands. But behind the bright purple and pink robes that he wore down to the ring, he had a darkness brewing underneath. A darkness that we've experienced many of the greats, the Kurt Cobains, the Chris Cornells, Robin Williams, the kind of darkness that it makes it hard for men to overcome, and he eventually succumbed to that darkness. So when I say that, it's not because I'm trying to be funny, but it's because I hear his voice in the back of my head, and it's an homage, and it's my ability to carry on, but it's also me being able to reflect that I come from a similar position. My early childhood was very tumultuous. One weekend, we're in Niagara Falls at Labor Day celebrating as a family, and by the end of October that year, my mom had died of cancer, unbeknownst to us, carrying it the whole time. And after that, nothing was ever really the same. My dad, he tried, but he couldn't get past that crushing blow that he felt. So our home life was a series of 4 of us separately trying to figure it all out on our own. As you can imagine, I started to spiral, and by the time I was in high school, I was drinking, I was drugging, but by all appearances, hey, I'm a tall guy, I'm athletic, I'm sharp, sexy, you know, all the things you would attribute to being someone who's on the up and up, but underneath, it was a disaster. By 21, I was addicted to Oxycontin, amongst other things. I was homeless, I had no hope, I had nothing. I was spiraling, arrested, and I had hit basically the lowest point in my life looking at the dome light that night. But I had no idea that within a few days, I was going to have the first of 5 interactions that I call microshifts, 5 small, innocuous conversations that seemed like they were very small and had no meaning, but had such a dramatic impact on my life. The 5 people who saved my life and never even knew they were doing it. Microshift number 1, hope from strangers. A few days after this Walmart event, I woke up a brisk 20 degrees, and I decided to grab that half-empty bottle of vodka and just take it down. And I remember being on one of the back roads in my area that had a straightaway that went into a very curvy road, and I decided, this is it, this is the end of it all. I'm just going to take this as fast as I can. And I did. I just pumped the gas, went into the turn, whipped my car around, and I can't explain it to you, but I got airborne, and I felt free. Literally, I felt free. I'm like a bird, I'm gonna fly. That's how I felt. I felt true freedom, like I was about to exit this pain that I was in. Somehow I managed to nudge the car against the tree, and it hit the ground, and in all of this, I never removed my foot from the gas, and it shot out facing the opposite direction I'd come from. Now, many people would look at that and say divine intervention, but I was way too far gone. So I continued my journey, and later that day I ran out of gas. And that's when I realized that I was alone and that the world had moved on without me, because I had no one to try to call. And as I stood outside my car for over 10 minutes waiting, hoping that someone would stop and let me continue on, nothing happened until finally a couple pulled over. And now listen, I wouldn't have pulled over for me. I was rough, I was ragged, I looked like I had been through the ringer. But they pulled over and they let me into their car. And when I was in the car with them, they talked to me and they asked me questions, and they were real questions, like I was having a real conversation. This wasn't hollow. And when they took me to my father's as I was getting out of the car, the lady in the front seat grabbed my arm and looked at me and said, "We love you, we hope everything works out, and you're strong enough to get through this." Now, at the time, I don't know, I don't care, I'm drunk, I'm high, I just want to get out, try to continue doing my activities. But I remember that night, when I finally put the car in park to go to sleep, it was on my mind. And the next day, it was on my mind. And I came to realize that sometimes belief from a stranger hits deeper than advice that you get from a friend, because it has no reason to exist, except that someone saw something in you worth saving. Microshift number 2, dignity at rock bottom. A few nights after this, I'm back up to my old antics. I've had a few conversations up to this point with people telling me, hey, there is a place around town for people like you who have no hope that you can go stay at. It's called the Rescue Mission of Mahoning Valley. It's a homeless shelter. And I thought, awesome. So I'm driving around looking for it. I finally found it. I pull in, I put the car in park, and I say to myself, this is it. This is where it all turns around. And I immediately put the car in reverse, pulled back out, and decided I can't admit defeat. I can still do this on my own. I've dug this hole. Somehow I can create a way for myself to crawl out of this hole. I decided to go about my antics that night, did some of the worst things that I've ever done in my life, which we won't go into for legal reasons at this point. But needless to say, at one point I look up and there's a cop behind me. Now I know how this works. I've had this interaction way too many times, unfortunately, and I know I have a cracked taillight. So it wasn't but a quarter of a mile after that I see the blue and red lights go on the cop's car. And in that moment, I felt nothing, just bottom, nothingness. Not happy, not sad, not, oh my God, what's going to happen? Just, I don't care. Anything has to be better than this. As the officer is walking towards my car, he shines his light in the back seat, looks around more than I would have assumed he would, and as he makes his way to my window, I'm preparing to have a conversation I've unfortunately had way too many times in my life. As soon as I roll down the window, I don't have that conversation. The officer says, listen, we've already run your plates. We know that you have no insurance. It's pretty clear to us that you're living in your car, but we will have to take your car tonight. Is there any place you can go? And I calmly explained to him, no, I will have to take my belongings, wander the street, sleep on it, whatever. He's like, nope, that's not how this works. You cannot do that. So he says, is there any place at all, anywhere that we can take you? Now I start to think to myself, you're a smart guy. Is there any place that takes in people who don't have a home, who really need help? The rescue mission of Mahoning Valley. Let's go to the rescue mission of Mahoning Valley. So he gets on the phone, he makes the call. Sure enough, that's where I'm going to go. You know, it's funny how life works sometimes. You try to do things on your own, make the decision yourself, and you can't do it, but sometimes life will force you into the position where it will drag you to having to do it on your own. But that interaction with the cop was interesting because, like I said, I've had them plenty of times before. And this was different because in that conversation, he gave me my dignity back that I had thought I had long lost. And that was enough to make me finally walk through that door. Microshift number 3, the mirror moment. It's now midnight on Valentine's Day. Friendly cop has delivered me to the rescue mission. Who knew that was the package they would be receiving on Valentine's Day, but it was me. I'm greeted by a short, stocky Italian man by the name of Frank Romandetti. I come to find out he is a giant teddy bear, but in the moment he is definitely Billy Goat Gruff. And he's looking me up and down as he's walking me back to the reception area to do intake. And he says, above his glasses, how old are you? And I say, 21. Where are you from? Canfield, I trepidatiously say, because Canfield was an upper middle class area of Youngstown, which otherwise is very low socioeconomic. He looks at me and says, so what have you done to your life that by the time you're 21 years old, coming from Canfield, that you've landed in the homeless shelter? And it really hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't think up to this point anyone had really ever made me look at myself like that and do that self-evaluation, because up to this point you have to understand, Nikki was the victim. Nikki was misunderstood. If Nikki just had a different upbringing and things were a little bit smoother, Nikki would have never done these things. But they were all lies. When I held up the mirror to myself and experiencing what was around me, watching kids who had to worry about shelter, kids who had to worry about how they were going to eat, I was able to realize that I had all the chances in the world. I had no shortage of opportunity. The reason why I was in the position I was in is because I made mistakes over and over and over and over, and they finally caught up to me. Unfortunately, Frank just passed away recently. Every time I saw him for literally decades now at this point, him or his family, I told him what he meant to me at every chance I could. And he might be gone, but he won't be forgotten, because especially for me that night, he did more than open up a door to let me have a place to rest my head that night. But he held up a mirror I badly needed to look into. And what I saw in that reflection was finally the start of a man who was really ready to take ownership of his life. Microshift number 4, the friend I couldn't save. Now, we talked about Larry Sweeney when we started this thing off, and he and I stayed in touch as best as we could over the years. He exited wrestling probably around 2008. I would call him, I would text him. I tried the best I could. Sometimes I'd get a response, sometimes it would be months in between. The last thing I heard is that he was finally putting it back together. That's right, he was going to lace the boots back up and get in the ring and deliver to the world what I felt the world needed. But unfortunately, one day in 2011, I got a phone call informing me that he had taken his own life. And it hurt, even though we were not close. We were not best friends. We were just acquaintances that vibed, but we wanted to try to keep in touch with each other. So I felt for some time that I failed him because I was a person who was on the edge and someone helped me back off the edge, and I couldn't do that for him. But even though he wasn't able to write his next chapter in life, I was able to because of the impact he had on me. So now if I can pay that forward, maybe someone else will be able to move on with the next chapter of theirs as well. Microshift 5, the man who named my worth. Now, there's a man in Youngstown, Ohio. His name's Tony Larisha. Tony is a Youngstown legend because of the philanthropic impact he's had on the area. You can drive around so many things in Youngstown and see the word the Larisha family, and it's never Tony Larisha, it's always the Larisha family. The funny thing about Tony is that he was about 4'6", and so when he and I stood next to each other, it was a Danny DeVito, Arnold Schwarzenegger like thing from the 80s movies. But for whatever reason, he took a liking to me, and I had just started college at Youngstown State University, and because he put so much money into the building, he had an office there which happened to be adjacent to mine. And once he heard my story, he used to come in all the time and talk to me about whatever was on his mind, the most ridiculous of things, but he would also ask, how are you doing? How's school going? He would even take me into his office. He would literally kidnap me while other people were paying me and take me into his office and have me perform tasks for him. I would sit at his Merrill Lynch portfolio and execute trades, and the man had more money than I've ever seen in my life, and he's trusting an ex-drug addict who wasn't very clean at this point to do it. But he saw something in me. One day, we're walking down the hall at Youngstown State University, as we were wont to do, chit-chatting, and he passed a professor and randomly decided this is the best time in the world to stop this professor and say, did you know Nikki used to be a drug addict? And I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting introduction to a human being I've never met before, but okay, carry on. And this became a habit. Every time we would walk down the hall, he would just find people to stop and be like, did you know Nikki was a drug addict? And finally, I had to go up to him and I'd say, Tony, what are you doing? Why are you telling people that I'm a drug addict? And he looked up at me, and I'm serious, he had to literally look up at me, and he said, because most of these people here will never do what you've done, Nikki, and you should be proud of that. Okay, well, continue on then, Tony. Continue to do what you feel like you have to do. But it was in that moment where I finally had that final movement inside, where I was able to get myself from the point where I was, using a wrestling analogy, on the mat to kind of starting to stand up to the point now where I just needed one more thing, just one thing, one small something to carry me a little more over the edge. And that's what Tony provided to me. Be proud of it. And that's exactly what I'm doing here today. It's amazing to me, sincerely amazing, that so often people look at their lives and they look at those big moments like, oh, you ran a wrestling company, or oh, you lost your mom, or oh, you were at a homeless shelter. But really, it was 5 small interactions, 5 little microshifts that allowed me to go do the things that I've been able to do. It was hope from a stranger. It was dignity when I didn't deserve it. It was someone willing to hold up a mirror so that I could see exactly what I was. It was having to deal with someone I couldn't save, and it was someone giving me permission to take pride in the things that I've been through. And at the end of the day, that's what I want to be able to do to someone else. That's what I want to be able to provide that person. So if you're here today and something in your life feels stuck or heavy or like it just doesn't fit anymore, understand this. You are not alone. You are worth it, and it's never too late to get your house on straight. And maybe, just maybe, something I said in this conversation might move you to the point where you'll make a decision to start living life to its fullest. Remember, you're just one conversation away from your first microshift. MIT, you've been amazing. Thank you so much.